And he said that basically your energy is coming from the lack of resistance in your system. So if you have necrotic tissue, if you have damaged tissue, if you have calcification, it's an obstruction. And therefore the energy can't move through properly. You have to allow that self-eating to occur to allow the energy to move through so you can just keep going and going and going. One of the things you notice if you're a consistent faster is you walk around and you can see the buildup of the emotional and mental toxins and physical toxins, everybody around you. And especially when somebody gets into their 60s, 70s, 80s, you see it just hits overload. It's like, oh man, that person needs to fast. Oh my God, that person needs to cleanse. Whoa, if that guy could just let go of that emotional trauma that's holding all that weight on, all those things.
Greetings and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Dr. Espen podcast. I'm Espen. Today I'm joined by one of my old heroes, and we've been having a little chat before I started the recording. This is an absolute treat. Today we're chatting with David Avocado Wolfe. I'm sure you know who David Wolfe is. If not, you've been living under a rock, or it might be time for you to take a good look at what David has to share in terms of how to optimize the performance of the human frame. David Wolfe is an absolute rock star, so-called Indiana Jones in the superfood and longevity multiverse. His social media posts that reached millions of people around the world. And his expertise spans over 29 years of dedicated experience really understanding the power of human biology. And not just human biology in terms of what the body is and does and can do, but how to reverse aging, how to optimize performance, how to live in a beautiful state, how to acknowledge this vessel that the spirit lives in. I remember for myself, many years ago when the movie Food Matters came out, and I was watching this, and for me as a having background as a nutritionist, a clinic owner, having owned and operated 10 multidisciplinary health clinics, I know there's a massive difference between the so-called healthcare industry, which is really sick care industry, and the real healthcare industry. And I have to say that what David Wolfe will share with us today and what he's been teaching for, like I said, over 29 years is nothing short of revolutionary. And at the same time, so simple to apply that I feel personally that if we don't apply these superfood, fasting, call it biohacking peak performance principles that everyone can apply, that aren't expensive, most of them are really a lot cheaper than not applying it, is so powerful. And if you haven't already, tune into this conversation today, because this could be the moment where your life changes forever. David Avocado Wolfe is the visionary founder and president of the non-for-profit called the Fruit Tree Planting Foundation, and the author of the book, Have the Best Day Ever, Every Single Day. There's a lot to chat about today. And I just want to jump straight in and say, David Wolfe, brother, welcome to the Dr. Espen podcast. How are you today, man?
Fantastic. I'm the best ever, actually. Just arrived in Texas, back at my warehouse here. I was on a kind of a hustle in Florida. We also have some business in Florida, so I was running around in Florida, and before that was on the farm. So it's been kind of cool just getting, because I was 6 weeks on the ground, on the farm, 8 to 10 hours of farm work every day. It's kind of nice to just be more in a desk job, I have to say.
Let's get straight in. I remember when I was young, I thought I needed to eat a lot of food and, the macronutrients in place. And if I eat a lot of food, then I get really healthy. And then I realized over the years, as you teach, that most people are overfed and undernourished. You're on day what of your water fast, did you say?
Day 19.
Day 19 of water fast. So let's be clear. David has not had a single ounce or bit of food for those 19 days. And I've done a total of 30 days of water fasting myself. I realized when I started the water fasting strategy, if you will, or lifestyle moreover, man, did I realize that I did not need all of the food that I've been consuming. Man, did I realize that so much of the food that I've been consuming came from, I need to feel better emotionally. David, tell us about the power of fasting. Let's just start right there. This superpower that most people have never heard of. What's your take on fasting?
Well, if you want your powers back, fasting is the way to get your powers back. If you want to be, I'm 54 this year, so I'm in a scene, so I have to fast on water 54 days this year. This is a good one because now I did 11 days earlier in the year, then 5 days right before that. So I'm getting ahead, which is good. I did 58 days on water last year, and you get all your powers back. You want your joints to function properly. You want digestion to function properly. You want everything to work, your eyes to function properly. You don't need glasses, want to hear well. You have to allow autophagy to occur. You have to allow the self-eating so your body does the garbage clean, right? So it's not worried about more food coming in. It can use the energy to clean up the undigested protein, the undigested fat, the necrotic tissue that's been damaged. And this is such an important part of rejuvenation. Now, as an Essene, this is part of the principle. For every year of life, you have to fast a day that year. So, for example, if you're 20, you have to fast 20 days on water. If you're 50, you have to fast 50 days on water. And so I've been keeping up with that as best as I can. And thank God I got those teachings. Thank God that had gotten into me, and that I just toughened up, and I was like, I got to go through it. I just got to do it every year. And I'm telling you, what a magical experience, because now you find out that what Arnold Ehret had written all those years ago. You remember Arnold Ehret? He was one of the famous fasters, and he was a really big fruit guy back in the 1920s. And he said that basically your energy is coming from the lack of resistance in your system. So if you have necrotic tissue, if you have damaged tissue, if you have calcification, it's an obstruction. And therefore the energy can't move through properly. You have to allow that self-eating to occur to allow the energy to move through, so you can just keep going and going and going. And then that's a kind of a paradox. People are like, are you wiped out? I'm like, no, not at all. I'm like ready to rock all day and night. So that's, knowing that because you've done long fasting, once you get past burning off all the soot and the debris and the necrotic tissue, which could cause energy disruptions and could cause you to crash and feel lackadaisical or tired or wiped out, then you have an infinite energy awaiting on the other side of that.
Oh, I love that answer. And honestly, I realized that for myself as well. The old paradigm, I need food to have energy, not correct. And again, just be clear, check with your holistic wellness doctor before you cut out all the food and go driving. And, you need to make sure you don't have a full crash. If you've been burning a lot of sugar over a long period of time, you can't just go, I'm not going to eat anything for a month. Like, there is the transition period, right? I live intermittent fasting Monday to Friday. I only eat for that short window, 8 hours or so. And I go on extended water fasts, similar to what you talked about. And what I apply is a lot of breath work, which we'll talk about in a moment. But I wanted to just check in. You're saying the Essenes. Is this the Essenes as in the lineage that many people speak that Jesus would follow as well? Is this the same kind of knowledge? Because if so, I'm truth bumping here now. I'd like to know a little bit more about it, please.
Okay, fantastic. Yes, it is. So Jesus was believed to be an Essene, and we have very good evidence of that coming from multiple quarters. And so the Essenes were like a Jewish sect that converted essentially to Christianity after Jesus, and they were always considered the longest lived people in the Middle East. So Josephus wrote about the Essenes way back in right around 0 BC, 0 AD, whatever, at the turn of the millennium. And
100 years, right?
They had a 125-year lifespan typically, and they practiced fasting. They practiced internal cleansing. They used aloe vera, which is interesting because aloe vera is from Africa and it worked its way into the Middle East. So they used aloe vera, which to me is one of the great longevity substances, one of the best things for your epithelial cells, which is the skin that covers the outside of your body and the skin that covers the inside of your body in your digestive canal, for example. And the Essenes also had just a wonderful way of I think, integrating real life problems like parasites into their spiritual and religious worldview, right? Today, you go to a church, they would never talk about parasites. You don't hear anything about that. But parasites,
you do need to.
But you do need to. You need to know that there could be unwanted guests aboard, castaways, stowaways, and that's part of the Essene way too. So I'm an Essene, so every 3 months I've got to do that process, get the parasites out, do the heavy metal cleansing, and work my way into the fast. And I've been doing that for so many years. It's easy for me to fast a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks now, but it wasn't always easy. And that's why it was very important that you put that caveat in there. You just can't start fasting long periods of time, especially if you're a diabetic or if you're hypoglycemic. You have to work your way into it slowly. And that's kind of what we do. We do online cleanses with people, and we just help them work into, hey, try your first day of fasting and just get them to that stage.
Oh, this is awesome. So I know this is indeed, superpower. You mentioned get your power back. So when you say we do this, are you referring to your work? I mean, do people go to David Wolfe, that is WOLFE.com to find out more about this information?
Well, yeah, we usually put it on Frequency Lifestyle. That's kind of my more like what's happening in the moment site, frequencylifestyle.org. And yes, and about, and we do it, make it very affordable. It's $99. And then people get us for 3 weeks and we just get them through the first week. And that's what we're doing is we're preparing them to intermittent fast, right? So we're bringing the calories down. We're going to 1 meal a day. Second week, we get them off all solid foods. We remove the impulse to grab food and eat it. It has to be blended, it has to be juiced, but you can't just grab something and eat it. And then we work our calories down that week too. And then by the day 15, then we're ready to either stay on the juice feasting or stay on the blended diet with low calorie, or we're ready to fast on water.
Beautiful. I love how you mentioned the Essenes because I've studied that a lot lately, and I understood, Jesus, for example, in my studies anyway, he went to India and he went to Egypt. He learned about all of the powerful principles, wisdom of those different traditions, and he integrated much of that. And I know also the fasting is really powerful here. I mean, for me, David, it feels like most people have been conditioned. They're in such a state that they're emotionally unequilibrated. I teach emotional healing. I do a 3-day program where we go through fear, guilt, shame, grief, basically what blocks the energy centers. You mentioned the density and the toxicity in the body stops the energy from flowing, stops prana, life force, whatever you want to call it, from flowing. So when we can fast, we can purify the temple and life force can flow. I'd like to know a little bit more about this from your, and not just from the Essene perspective, but the last 29 years you've been doing this. What have you realized? What have you discovered when it comes to the spiritual essence that who we are, and proven by quantum science for over 100 years, known in spirituality for thousands of years? We know that the majority of who we are is non-physical, call it life force, prana, call it consciousness, energy, whatever. When we purify the body, David, what have you seen in terms of these powers that you mentioned before coming to life, and or what's capable for us when we purify the temple in terms of the spiritual nature of who we are?
Fantastic. Well, the spiritual nature of who we are is the most important part of healing. And the more we work on the spiritual, emotional, and mental, even before the physical, then the more likely we're going to have positive results. I've never seen a case where somebody's condition wasn't mental and emotional. Never seen a case. And I've been looking. Right? There's always some kind of a, emotional trigger, trauma, a mental hang up that's related to the particular condition. So that's why we work on those things preferentially. Now, we are spirit in a human body. We're an avatar. And that is something really important to understand. It's a beautiful discovery, because then you can kind of step into your life more like it's a video game. It's a simulation. It's a spiritual video game. That's what it is. And in the spiritual world, we're working on morality. We're working on integrity. We're working on trust. We're working on relationships. We're working on all the things that are actually making the world better. If you really think about it, right? If we don't have integrity, if we don't have trust, if we don't have spirituality, if we don't have relationships, then the world's not going to get better. And we can see that today, by the way, because we went so far into the quote unquote secular, which really isn't secular. It's just kind of an anti-religion, which is, we're going to use science and we're going to say, now this is our new religion. It's not going to work. And that's why we're having so many troubles today. And by the way, I think the scientific method is absolutely an awesome way of knowing, outstanding way of knowing, but it's not the only way of knowing. And it can't be ennobled into a religion, because it's the scientific method. We're testing it constantly, right? And things could change. And that's how things evolve. So to me, it's an absolutely awesome thing to get into fasting, because that keeps you honest. It keeps you honest. You can't be running around with some kind of lack of integrity or moral breakdown while you're fasting. It's just, you have to stay straight. And that's a beautiful check-in on your personality. It's a good check-in on your direction in life.
Yeah. What I realized for me when I started the fasting is a lot of emotions would come up. And, I grew up in a household. When I was 5, I walked into my brother's bedroom. I found him passed away. 2 years later, my sister was born disabled. And then my father as well, both alcoholics. So I grew up with a lot of emotional toxicity or a lack of opportunity to talk about emotions and understand emotions. And I grew up and I recognized that I was really not emotionally equilibrated. I had suppressed a lot of emotions. I was very strong mentally, very strong physically, spiritually, weak, emotionally very, very weak. And so I recognized that I actually was not living a good life in terms of my quality of life, because my emotions were that of what I experienced in childhood. We know about the imprint period. We know about the traumas, the psychosomatic aspect of it. And so what I realized when I started fasting is that I started feeling angry, and I started feeling sad, and I started feeling abandoned. And I started feeling lonely. And I recognized that when I cut out the food that had been a comforter for me, I got the opportunity to sit with the wounding of the past that I hadn't healed yet, that I realized only when fasting that I was actually using food to comfort myself as an unconscious form of escape. So I realized the fasting brought to light the things that I needed to see. How do you find the whole emotional aspect of the decision making? Because, okay, yes, we want to fast. We need to fast. If we don't fast, we're not going to be well. We're going to bioaccumulate toxins until the point where we are most likely going to get sick, and it could be too late. So catching it now is powerful. But what role does emotions play in how we experience life, and potentially also how we eat and drink?
The emotion is where things get knotted up. And so that will cause the comfort eating, then the buildup of toxicity. One of the things you notice if you're a consistent faster is you walk around and you can see the buildup of the emotional and mental toxins and physical toxins, everybody around you. And especially when somebody gets into their 60s, 70s, 80s, you see it just hits overload. It's like, oh man, that person needs to fast. Oh my God, that person needs to cleanse. Whoa, if that guy could just let go of that emotional trauma that's holding all that weight on all those things, it's a major deal. So that's something that is just one of the things that I face, in the world. If you're somebody who's into health, you're into fasting, you're into cleansing, and you do work on yourself in that way, it humbles you. So, there's no judgment, but you also feel, you also see, you can see the issues in our society much more clearly. And then you also know that, okay, it just keeps me honest in the sense of like, I can see where the person's at. So when we are coaching people who are new, I know where they're at. So we're not trying to jump them into a 20-day fast or something. We're just like, hey, let's get them into 1 day of fasting. Let's get them their first water fast, first single day, and get that success under their belt so they can begin to build momentum and move forward. Now, fasting is not the only thing, is it? Another thing is that we're not out eating junk food either. So we're not stuffing all this stuff on top of our emotions.
Yeah.
That's another big part of what we do, is just training people. Hey, have a blended meal, have an organic superfood smoothie, have something that's not going to put all this weight and excess on your system that we've seen all our lives. It's just insane. So that's another thing, is getting them off the GMO food, the sprayed food, getting them into maybe even growing their own food. We grow, the farm I was just on is a berry farm. I've been there 20 years. What a fun thing to have all these berries. And then if I have to leave, I'm not eating, I'm fasting, I had to leave. So what am I doing? I'm picking all the berries, freezing them and putting them in the freezer so that when I get back there, I've got a whole freezer full of berries and I can just blend those things on up 3 meals a day, because I love berries. I think berries are the most natural human food and the best for us.
Agreed. And also in many ways, the most amount of toxins and chemicals are on those berries, particularly when we eat the non-organic ones. And so, as I say, when we look at the world right now, where there is a tremendous amount of deliberately hidden toxins in our food, in our water, in our sky, everywhere. I know that you were recently, let's say, uninvited from communicating as effectively as you could have and should have on social media. I have too, because I believe we've spoken up about some of the corporations out there that are making a lot of money from us being sick. David, now that we know that there is a lot of toxins, and I think honestly, people have no fucking idea the amount of shit that is hidden in the food. And so we just go to the local supermarket and grab the apple, not considering that, oh, hang on, it's not just an apple, it's an apple sprayed with hundreds of chemicals, and that will bioaccumulate. Some will cross the blood-brain barrier, some will get stuck in your brain. It will accumulate over time, making us sick. I mean, what is it going to take? And I'm saying this from a perspective of, I've done this for a lot of years and I'm okay with letting go of my attachment to people getting it, because that's their journey. But at the same time, there's a little part of me, David, that's like, if people only got how simple it is to let go of our connection and attachment to these toxins. If people just grasp what these things are doing to us, we would make different choices. What is it going to take, David, in your eyes, for humanity to wake up and start to honor the physical vessel that is our temple and stop putting shit in and actually start getting out of the body what we deserve? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think there's two things come up for me. One is that the current generation, everybody alive on earth right now, the best way to learn is to go through the school of hard knocks and to battle for our health. And there's so many people in the world that I've met over the years who became the healthiest person in their family. They were the most unhealthy. They went all the way from one side to the other. And so that was just pain. Pain drove them. And unfortunately, pain is a great motivator. And for most of us, that's going to be the best motivator. So sometimes we have to go through pain. The other thing is that there's more souls incarnating now that are from the light. They're just a higher frequency of light coming in. And so I do see that the younger generation is more capable of being woken up to these things as long as you get to them early and be like, okay, we're going organic, check out this, that. Look, we're looking at all these things and we're bringing it all together for the kids in such a way that they can get it and they can activate a healthy lifestyle right from the get-go. And to me, that's the greatest thing about the next generation, is that they just seem to get it so quick. And it maybe has something to do with growing up with social media, growing up with tablets and all that kind of stuff. You say something and they got it quick, or they'll verify it very quickly. So I have real hope for the next generation. A lot of people don't. I do. I think the next generation is amazing. At least the kids I've met. My God, some of these 10-year-olds, some of these 5-year-olds. I'm hanging out with a 5-year-old, 6-year-old. I think she's now 6. In about 5 days, I'm going to go to San Antonio, the other side of Texas. And this kid's a genius, just a genius. I mean, it just blows my mind. Grew up organic. Mom was organic. Dad was organic. A lot of their food's grown there on their own land. And you could just see, like, wow, look at the brightness coming off this child. They have a new baby now. So I'm very excited about that kid. That kid's about 6 months old now. So to me, that I've got great hope.
I agree with you. And I think that's true, because what's been done before doesn't work. We look at the so-called healthcare system and we know it's broken. It's bought. We look at, the so-called nutrition out there, and we know it's not nutrition. It's, food-like products and many, many dead products. So I know that we have to change our ways. And I think it's a great point that you make, that when we look at what's not working, the newer generation, with the availability of this information. My parents never had this information. I didn't have this information until I realized that, hang on, there is a different way. And so podcasts like this, davidwolfe.com, and what is it? Frequency. What did you say? What was the website before?
FrequencyLifestyle.org.
I like this, frequencylifestyle.org. Check it out. I think this is given. And, I've been measuring my biological age. I'm 31 now. I'm actually in my 40s. I can perform at superhuman capabilities based on these principles. And I could only imagine what you can do in terms of your fasting. What are some other superhuman tools and or peak performance hacks that we could apply if we want to reverse our biological age as we go through life and have more energy and increase our energy frequency and vibration? What are some of the other tools, biohacking tools, superhuman tools that you found at the top of your game?
Well, I'm 54, so at my age, I don't really need a lot of food, right? It's just my body's already constructed. If I was 5 years old, it's a different story, but at my age now, I don't need a lot of food. So what I've done over the years is gone all the way into the superfoods and the herbalism. So that's really where I think it's at, is the superfoods and the herbalism. So the superfoods to me, like cacao or maca or aloe vera or hemp seed or chlorella or super blue-green algae or spirulina, those types of things are drivers or carriers for the herbalism. Now, what's the herbalism look like? Well, the medicinal mushrooms are huge, an amazing beneficiary of that world of herbalism, because now we have all this data on the top 20 medicinal mushrooms. I'm a wild mushroom. I became a wild mushroom hunter in my life. I became just a lover of that whole kingdom of food and medicine. And also there's toxins in that world too. So you have to know what you're doing. But the medicinal mushrooms are a big, easy to understand category in the herbalism. There's also the great Chinese herbs. There's the great Ayurvedic herbs. You don't need herb number 500 on the list. We're not getting there. Or herb number 3,000. We're not getting there. It's like, let's go to number 1. Let's go to number 2. Let's go to number 3. So in Ayurveda, the top things are Tulsi, of course, shilajit, resin, ashwagandha, these types of things. So we go right to the top. Or let's say it's Amazonian herbalism. Okay, we're going to go right to Uña de Gato. We're going to go right to Pau d'Arco. Or let's say you're in Australia. There's a whole world of those amazing herbs from and that history there. Just pick the top ones. So you don't need all of them, but you do want to find out some of them and kind of hang your hat on them and go all the way in. So here in North America, we have such availability of reishi mushroom, for example. I mean, I've seen reishi mushroom growing out of the ground here in Texas, which it doesn't grow out of the ground. It grows on trees. But I just one of those weird things about this state. You're just like, what's reishi mushroom doing growing out of the ground here? It's like that. It's just reishi's like that. It's going to surprise you and shock you. And so that's why I've got super into the medicinal mushrooms. It's also something that connects you with your ancestors. The medicinal mushrooms, for example, like I'm thinking of one called Fomes fomentarius. It looks like a horse hoof hanging out off a tree. It's a bracket mushroom. And that was used to control fire in the circumpolar northern regions of the world for 10,000 years before there was lighters, before there was matches, because you could core a little hole in it and you could take an ember of chaga mushroom. So you have a hot ember of chaga mushroom. Chaga burns hot, hot, hot. It won't go out for 2 days. And you could get it into that hole and you could carry the ember in your hand. It's just amazing. So when you get into the medicinal qualities, the historical value, just the fun of learning about it, it's all about, at our age, it's all about herbalism, because that's where all those incredible alkaloids are that nourish your immune system, that protect you from colds, coughs, flus, fevers, sore throats. And, I say this all the time. We have figured out the cure to the common cold long ago. It's been figured out. And it's a process of learning what it is. And it's also a process of getting out of the necrotic tissue and the damaged tissue and the excess fat that those critters feed on, right? Those harmful bacteria want a little source of energy. Those parasites want a little source of energy. So they're going to go after the excess in your system. So if you get rid of the excess, do the herbalism to nourish your immune system, then you become resistant to colds, coughs, flus, fevers, anything.
Ladies and gentlemen, that there is exactly what I was talking about. That's the David Avocado Wolfe that we know. When he speaks, he flows, and there's truth here. I can feel it in my nervous system. I love the inspiration that I can feel listening to you, David. And I want to say again, I mentioned this before we started the interview. I want to just take a moment out to thank you and acknowledge you for your service. You've been at this for almost 3 decades. You've inspired myself and many others. I remember I bought a stack. You remember the days that we used to have DVDs? I bought a stack of the Food Matters DVDs, and I was selling them out to all of my patients and those who couldn't afford it. I said, just take it, but do me a favor, make sure you play that video or play that, Food Matters, production in front of as many friends and family members as you can. Let's get this out there to the people. So, mate, I just really want to acknowledge you for the wisdom that you're sharing. And I hope that our listeners and viewers will share this with as many people as possible. And also just take a look in the mirror and look at this amazing vessel and ask, how can I acknowledge, how can I honor this vessel, and maybe apply some of the principles that David's been talking about here to reduce the calories and increase that experience of the human nature. Thank you for inspiring us, bro. I really felt that. And it just brings me back to the cacao that I'm drinking, and so many of the things that I've applied in my life comes to many of your teachings. So again, dude, thank you. And really receiving that, that transformation in my life. Again, just wanted to acknowledge you.
Right on. Awesome. And just so everybody knows, what you're drinking there is basically a superfood drink. And what an amazing thing just to step into that world, so that what you're putting in your body is pure nutrition. It's got incredible lineage. The lineage of cacao in Central and South America is exquisite. It's extraordinary. It's magical. It's one of the most important plants of the Americas, native to the Americas. And then you get to participate in the original raw cacao, the original way that native people consumed it. And it was always consumed as a beverage, which is really cool too. So getting tapped into that, right? So you have that cacao with the cayenne, with the vanilla, with the hot tea going in there, and you blend that up. You're participating in a strategy of health and longevity and lifestyle of food that's gone back thousands of years. I love that part about it. To me, that's one of the things that I really get lit up about. That's why I like being the quote unquote Indiana Jones of the superfoods world, because I get to go to the places like Oaxaca. I get to go to the places where these traditions are still alive. It's amazing. I feel like, wow, look, they're still using, like, for example, one of my favorite flowers is called Quara Rabea funebris. It's a flower they use with cacao and these ancient drinks. And it's a butterscotch flavor. It's how they got the butterscotch flavor back then. And you go to Oaxaca, it's still there, still happening just the way it has for thousands of years.
Awesome. I love this. You talk about, what I got from this was kind of like ceremony and or the tradition of passing on these superfoods, it's in the name, down the lineage to allow people to realize that nature has the answer. I don't think there's any single chronic disease that's ever been created, man-made or whatever, or accumulated that cannot be found in nature. So I wanted to segue a little bit and ask, in 2016, I was burned out. I had adrenal fatigue. I was a millionaire, but I was absolutely broken. And I realized that I had worked so hard, sacrificing myself, trying to feel, good about myself with achieving success. And I just went, you know what? Done. I'm over this. So I sold out. I took 2 years off. The first thing that I did, David, is I got a one-way trip to South America. I disappeared into the jungle in Peru, and I had finished a 30-day fast. 10 of it was on water, 20 was just on herbs and fruits, and I was there to purify. I sat on the ground with the locals, drinking ayahuasca, San Pedro, the cactus that comes from the region that you're in now. I should say peyote and so on. And I had some interesting journeys, some major realizations. And I mean, we can go wherever you want. But my question to you is, apart from these medicines, foods being exactly that, in terms of alkaloids and what they do for the body, what's your thoughts on the traditions for thousands and thousands of years in certain regions around the world? We talked, these medicines and their application today. Obviously, they have psychedelic effects. They have healing capabilities. They're so-called illegal. We have an idea why, but I just want your take on it in terms of plant medicine and the psychedelic side of things. What are your thoughts?
I love plant spirit medicine, and I've been an advocate of those medicines for over 30 years. It's a favorite hobby of just studying it, studying what the shamans are up to, what they're growing, how to grow the stuff, investigating the mystery of it. And I will say this, my main takeaway from plant spirit medicine is it does cure you of one thing, which is the materialistic worldview. It breaks it down and throws it out. So it's interesting to me what you just said, because you had to fight through the material world, to make money, to make it in the world. And then when you finally said, I've had enough, and you went to the jungle, well, of course, that makes a lot of sense, because as you get into the plant spirit medicine, you realize that it's always been standing room only of spirit and soul on earth. It's always been standing room only, dense with spirit and soul. There's so many angels right around us at all times. And what a beautiful thing to know, not to think about, not to maybe think that exists, but to know viscerally that that's how it is. That's what plant spirit medicine does. And to me, that is one of the most important things, because this world that we're in right now, we're born into I call it scientism. People have different names for it. It's a scientism overlay. It's a scientism worldview where it's like science, 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 but it's beyond just the scientific method. It's a deeper problem, which is we take, quote unquote, the scientific method. We go through the troubles and toils of the materialistic worldview that's somehow explained away with science. And we come into a more magical reality, which is what exactly this is. This is a magical reality that we're living in. Let me tell you something else about the great medicines of the world. Being born in North America, I've been able to grow a lot of those medicines. I've grown San Pedro cactus, or huachuma from Peru. That's the cactus that Dr. Espen had referenced in Peru. I've grown, of course, ayahuasca in Hawaii for 20 years, 25 years, and grown all different kinds of sacred plants, tobacco too. It's just a hobby. It's just you take the greatest plants, the most interesting plants, and you grow them and you learn things that are completely special and totally unique. And for example, ayahuasca as a vine, it doesn't just vine up to trees. It'll vine up, grab them, and pull them down. It pulls them down. That's a fascinating discovery. the chacruna. The chacruna is the other plant that's used in the typical ayahuasca brew. That plant, together with the ayahuasca vine, is what creates the effect. But the chacruna, the leaf, it's in the rubiaceae, it's in the coffee family, and you can grow the whole tree, the whole bush, from a leaf. So that's another thing that's fascinating. I've grown whole bushes from just plant the leaf in the ground, and we'll grow a whole new bush. Another thing you learn from the magic of growing it yourself. And it goes on like that. To me, I also grow the flowering nicotianas. So many of the tobaccos that we hear about in the world are, for smoking or whatever, and that's the leaf that you're using. But many tobaccos are grown for their flowers, and they have an awesome floral energy. The floral energy is so beautiful in the tobaccos. There is an enormous array of flowering tobaccos or flowering nicotianas that are worth growing because they can have big, long stems in the flower with jasmine aromas. Some of the most exquisite aromas I've ever noticed in the plant kingdom have come from the tobaccos. So it's just one of these things you learn by growing it. And I really recommend, if you have a heart for it, if you have a love for growing plants, get into growing some of the power plants, things you can get a hold of, things that are not illegal and things that are nearby maybe, and dig in and find out and discover. And I think you'll be very enlightened by it, and just there'll be something that will emerge, something magical will come out of it all that will give you some wonderful and beautiful character to your life. It'll add some character to your life. And I think that's what plants do. Plants add character. Plants add a wonderful level of sophistication to your home, to your environment. And that's why I'm a plant advocate. I've been a plant advocate all my life. I love cats and dogs and all that kind of stuff, but I also love plants too. And you got to have a good variety of plants. So I think another thing that comes up in this regard about the nature of the materialism and the materialistic explanations of everything, that's a big problem, is everything has to be explained materialistically. That's a danger. We live in some kind of a paradox. And I know that from being in the field of nutrition. So for example, people are like, what's the best diet? Well, we have to go to the things that we know aren't going to change very much over time. Like, for example, you want food that's not being sprayed. You want food that's had no chemicals on it. You want food that's original. You want food that's grown by a farmer in good soil or grown by you in good soil. When you start to look at those particulars, then you can realize that those things are the things you should be looking for, and not like, should I do this diet or that diet? It's good to experiment with diets so you find out what's right for you. But I'm a fan of Rudolf Steiner, the great German mystic and probably the most important philosopher of the 20th century. And Rudolf Steiner said that there are as many diets on earth as there are human beings on earth. And wow, does that make a lot of sense to me?
I love the segue here, David, because you brought up Rudolf Steiner, and I prepared a quote by Rudolf Steiner that I'd like to bring to your attention, and I'd love your take on it. Amazing guy. Rudolf Steiner not only was the creator of biodynamic farming and the Waldorf method, but he was also a very esteemed, as far as I'm concerned, philosopher. His connection to Rosicrucianism and, I think many other types of philosophy is pertinent here. And he once said, whoever seeks higher knowledge must create it for himself. He must instill it into his soul. It cannot be done by study. It must be done through life. What are your thoughts?
I love it. Yeah. I'm a big believer in a living philosophy, and that's why I love Rudolf Steiner so much. So it's one thing to learn platitudes. It's one thing to learn ancient systems of knowledge and spirituality and healing and health. It's a whole nother thing to activate it, to get into it and make it a living teaching, a living, breathing phenomenon. And so that's always been my approach, is I love taking it into my life. For example, the cleansing and the fasting is not just, it's a great topic to talk about for sure, but it's much better to live it. It's much better. Then you learn to whoa, well, look at this philosophy. What the heck is going on here? It's beautiful. So that's my thoughts on that. I love Rudolf Steiner, by the way. And to me, I think he's the most important philosopher of the 18th, 19th, and 20th century. And that's really saying something.
Oh, I totally agree. And a lot of hidden knowledge. And also, I think if you study some of Rudolf Steiner's work, not only do we know that he left some powerful things behind, but I also think he could give us some really good guides or guidelines as to how to prepare for the potential future. On that note, David, we know consciousness is expanding. In the last 5 years, humans have gone through a lot. There's been control, there has been manipulation, there's been, I don't want to go too dark on this, but let's just keep it factual and say that there's been a lot of sensationalism, a lot of things that are happening. We know that this is, well, maybe, let me rephrase. I feel like we're expanding consciously. We're awakening dormant superpowers that are within us. I think many of us realizing that the answers are found within. You've provided some remarkable fundamental tools that stand the test of time. We've talked about many on this call already. And I know sometimes philosophers say, if you have to ask where the world is going, you're not a leader. But I want your thoughts still. What's your thoughts on what is happening in the world right now and in terms of the evolution of consciousness? I'd love to know. You have met a lot of people. You're an Essene. I mean, how do you even become an Essene apart from reading the book and doing the practices? I'd like to know. What are your thoughts on the expansion of human consciousness and what each of us can and need to do at this point in time?
Right on. Well, I think what's happening is that the spirits of darkness know that new light's coming into the earth. If you listen to Sri Yukteswar and Rudolf Steiner and other theosophists, they're going to tell you that the Kali Yuga, the age of darkness, ended in 1899. So what's been happening since then? Well, there's been a huge descent of the spirits of darkness onto the earth to try to hold down the next generation, to try to make sure that the light doesn't break through. But the light will break through, and eventually we will get on the other side of the control types of mentality, the control types of systems that are in place. And so I have great hope for humankind, and I know that we're going to get through this. So what I would say is we're actually at the beginning of a light age. Very beginning, though. We're at the very, very beginning. So over the next 1,000 years, 2,000 years, things are going to get better and better and better and better and better, and we're going to experience a much different life on Earth. This is, when we look at the Vedic system, I think they have a really cool concept. The Kali Yuga is always the darkest of times. It's usually around 6,000 years, and it's shorter. And then the light ages are longer, and they crescendo up. So I think it's like a 12,000 year climb into the highest peak of the golden age, and then we'll wrap all the way around again. We'll go through this all over again at some other point. So we're in the very beginning of that, and you see it everywhere you look. You can see all of these kids. You can see all of the amazing new generation. They don't want war. They don't want to go fight anything. I think the problem they're going to have with their gin up to try to start World War III is that no one wants to do it. That's the problem they're going to have. People are just going to say, we're not doing it. We're not going to participate. And that's the message I think that we have to put out there, which is united non-compliance. United non-compliance. How do we stop all the tyranny? United non-compliance. We're just going to unite, and we're not going to comply. One of the things that is beautiful that's happening right now is many, many different walks of life are uniting together right now. Many different religions, races, many different people from all walks of life, all classes are uniting right now in that united non-compliance. We're like, we're not going to do it. Nope, we're not doing that. No, we're not buying the propaganda anymore. And so we're in a wonderful moment right now. And although it looks bleak out there, I can see that side of it, sure. But that's because they're fighting hard. The spirits of darkness are fighting hard to impose their energy on the new generation. It's just not going to work. And so, the light's coming in, and the beauty will happen, and the wonders will never cease.
I love that. I mean, the hope, the trust, the faith in that is what brings us forward. And I think that's really important to really anchor ourselves within that knowing of who we are and why we're here, to shine the light and to be that difference in the world. Perhaps I know for me, being the light is who I am. I mean, scientifically proven, we know who we are. It's not just flesh and bone. There's way more to us than that. And shining, forward, the way forward with love and compassion and unity, there's no way around it. In your studies, David, and potentially through the Essene communities and teachings, and perhaps, through your Vedic teachings or others, what are your thoughts on life force energy? Say Kundalini, it's dormant at the base of the spine. We know that we can move it up the spine. We can rejuvenate cells, organs, tissues in the body using this life force. Let's say that we have taken the time to purify the vessel. We meditate, we're clean, and we realize that, for example, breath work and other powerful tools could be used in this expansion of consciousness. What are your thoughts on, say, something like Kundalini?
Great. Okay. Well, I wanted to answer an earlier question before we get there is, how did I become an Essene? You asked me that. And one of the things about the Essenes is that we don't proselytize. We don't proselytize. It's just you recognize you're an Essene and that's it. You just recognize you're an Essene and you just continue on like that. It started when I was in San Diego. I had some wonderful Essenes there. My friend David Carmos, dearly departed, wonderful man. And he really saw me and he's like, you're an Essene. And then he kind of laid it all out for me. And that's how I got into the Essene teaching. That's where it all really started about 28 years ago, really far back. And then I just continued on with that. So I just want to put that out there. Now, when we look at the current situation of like this fusion of West and East knowledge, like the Kundalini concepts that come from the Vedic civilizations with other concepts that come from with the Western civilizations, and you bring them together, that's truly what we're trying to do as an integrated human being. We're trying to bring it all together. The wonderful teachings of meditation and the Kundalini forces and powers are very powerful when you put them in context of Western concepts of prayer, for example, and clearing your mind. This idea that, like, for example, when you're fasting, and I think this, you cannot let your mind get a hold of you and start running you around saying, hey, well, maybe I could just, maybe I could eat something, or, maybe I could just make this fast instead of 7 days. Maybe I'll make it 5. If you let that get away from you, you're going to get in trouble. So instead of that, you become a watcher of your thoughts. These are Eastern ideas, being a watcher of your thoughts. So I had to learn how to become a watcher of my thoughts and be like, oh, look at that. My brain was trying to talk me out of it. Look at that. Interesting. And stop self-identifying so much with your thoughts and be able to step back. And again, this fusion of the East and West, it's magical. So the Kundalini forces that are dormant within are very important, right? That's how to bring things through. This is something, to me, by working through the emotional traumas, breaking them down, dissipating them out of your system, the mental hang-ups, getting those dissipated out of your systems, and really honestly being spiritually connected to all creation, then you allow the Kundalini forces to come up automatically. And you feel that, especially with the fasting, because your energy is just, it's infinite. You don't need to sleep. You can keep going. You can do 8 hours of farm work, 10 hours of farm work. You don't even really need to drink much water. You can just keep going. And to me, that is one of the great discoveries of our time. It's like, whoa, the human being really doesn't need all this food. What we really need is to get rid of the emotional, mental, and spiritual blockages and physical blockages.
Oh, I love that. This is exactly my philosophy. I say there's nothing wrong with us. We're not broken. We don't need fixing, curing, or healing. However, there is interference. And if we can remove interference, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, chemical, as you've mentioned, then already we will come back to the essence of who we are, which is limitlessness, which is the infinite potential. I think that's so beautiful. I've got one last question for you straight off the cuff. Are you ready?
Yes.
Let's go. Here's the question, sir. I want you to now imagine that you are on the world stage. Every sentient being alive has gathered, listening, watching, and tuning in to your message to the world right now. When you're ready, take a breath and tell us, David Avocado Wolfe, what is your message to the world right now?
I've been a student of personal development technology all my life. I met Tony Robbins when I was 14. He was only 24, before personal power, before any of that stuff. I went to a summer camp and we began to learn how to speed read, how to speed learn. We learned a lot of things from Tony that day, and it got me oriented at age 14 to that world of peak performance and personal development. And I withdrew from that a wonderful phrase. It became the slogan of my life. And that is, today is the best day ever. Today's all you got. Tomorrow's never going to arrive. Yesterday's gone forever. The only day we got is today. So if it's not going to be the best day ever today, then when's it going to be? When's the best day ever coming? So it's today. Today is the best day ever. Now, if you say that to yourself in the morning, today's the best day ever, today's the best day ever, today's the best day ever, you will come back to me and you will find out the truth, which is somehow the day will orient itself and suddenly become the best ever. Now, the reason why that is, in my opinion, after all these years of putting that slogan out there, 35, 40 years putting that out there, I think it has something to do with, it's just not the best day. It's the best day ever. So when you turn it over to the creator and you're like, I don't know what the best day ever is going to look like. You create, you show me, I don't know. There's a built-in faith within it. And that's the reason why it's so powerful, because the creator goes, oh yeah, you want the best day ever? I'll show you, bam. And even when it's the worst ever, in the morning, I've been crucified and resurrected on numerous days, whereas like worst news ever in the morning, but I just kept at it, best day ever, best day ever, best day ever, and turned it around, completely turned it around by evening. So that's taught me that there is a magical force at work. There's a God force at work. And again, it has to do with that built-in faith that it's not for me to decide what the best day ever is. I don't know. I'm too busy. I got things I got to do. Let God decide and deliver.
You know, we could talk about a lot of things, and we could talk about a lot of stuff that is so powerful and transformative that most people, some will grasp the power of the tools that we've discussed today, and some will say that was a great podcast and yeah, I'll share it with some people or whatever. Some will go, aha, I get it. And to end it on the note of the connection to the creator and faith is absolutely awesome. As I say, the best biohacking tool ever is to connect to source. Hello, it's in the word source. Anyone? Powerful, powerful. And you know, the messages have the best day ever. So please, everyone, write this down. Okay, it goes like this: how to have the best day ever every single day. Again, how to have the best day ever every single day. Okay, this is I believe, must read. It's a book. Go and get it. I think this is, necessary to have. There's another one called The Secret Power of Attitude and Achieve with Grace, Synchronicity, and Flow. Write those down. Go look it up. Look at some of David's work. And again, thank you, David. I really appreciate it, man. What an exciting world we live in, and what a perfect and pertinent time to get these tools out to the people. I want to say again, thank you so much for your time. You're glowing, bro. And I'm so excited that you're on 19 of your however many days of your water fast, man. You really deserve all of that grace, all that love right back at you, mate. Thank you so much.
Right on. Thanks, bro. It's been beautiful. And thanks for being such a beautiful human being, doing good for people. Really appreciate you. And thanks to everybody for listening, getting all the way through the podcast. This was fun. It was really a cool, you never know what's going to happen in a podcast. So you took it through a very nice ride of wonder and joy and insight and also healing. Thanks.
Absolute privilege. davidwolfe.com. Look it up, check it out. And even if you just challenge yourself to doing the program for 30 days and then reassessing where you're at, the world is going to be a much better place. So thank you for being the light in the world, everyone watching and listening, and share this with podcasts and interview with as many people as you can. Awesome. Until next time.